Forestry Center building right at Kemp Station. And students from the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design will have spent about a week at Kemp Station to complete a series of short-term research studies on the ecology of the forests and lakes in the area. The students are majoring in fine arts, product design, illustration, and communication design. So this natural science field course is a novel experience for them. You're cordially invited to hear a short summary presentation of their findings from their week-long endeavor exploring a variety of ecological aspects. No registration is required, so you can just show up at Kemp, and that's at 9161 Kemp Road in Woodruff. You can follow signs from there to the Connor Forestry Station. Tonight, we have Leisha Johnson of North Lakeland Discovery Center speaking about bats. Yeah. Leisha joined the Discovery Center team in spring of 2007 as a seasonal environmental educator. In December 2007, she was appointed permanent staff. Leisha graduated from Carroll College in Waukesha, Wisconsin in May 2004, with a Bachelor's of Science in Natural Resource Conservation and Geography. In addition to teaching, Leisha is the coordinator for Discovery Center's outreach programs and bat education programming. She currently is also on the board of directors for the Wisconsin Association for Environmental Education. Way to represent. Per tradition, we have a trivia question about Leisha. So Leisha has a couple resident bats, which she has brought tonight. So after the show, when the lights are back down, you can come up and take a look at them. Only Leisha is allowed to handle them, but we can check them out. Anyway, so she has a couple resident bats at the center, Edgar and Eugene, that she interacts with often. However, these bats are similar in size and stature. Still, they are their own beings, and there is a definitive way Leisha uses to tell them apart. So what is it that distinguishes them? A, she can tell them apart by the way they smell. B, they fold their wings in different ways when they sleep. Or C, one is extroverted and one is introverted. So we have A, smell, B, folding of the wings, or C, introvert, extrovert. It's the way they smell. I'm sure she'll tell you more about that later. Leisha Johnson.
All right, thanks, Carol. Okay. Wow, I really wish more people were interested in learning about bats tonight. It's such a small group. All right. It's also, whoa. Well, thanks for coming. Thank you so much to UW for having me, Mary and Carol coordinating with me tonight to be here, and the boys, of course, the bats here we have. So my name is Leisha Johnson. I'm the Education Director and Naturalist at the North Lakeland Discovery Center. Has anybody ever heard of the Discovery Center? Yeah, so we're just up the road. I got to give them props because about 17 years ago, I had this started falling in love with bats, and I was like, I want to do all these bat things, and we're not going to make any money of me doing it, but I want to do it. And this organization has been so supportive. So I've got our little Discovery Center staff team over here, which is awesome. All right, so I've been told I have 20 minutes to talk about bats, which I could talk about bats forever. It's also new for me to be seated and talking and behind a table. If you know me, I'm always like all over the place. So what we're going to do tonight, I'm just going to talk briefly about the bats at Wisconsin. I've got a couple questions for you, some of their benefits, their threats, their current status, some things that are going on with them. And then we open up to questions. I'm happy to discuss the boys here. You know, what is it like to take care of bats, and how do I even have bats, and that kind of thing. But the one question I always get is why bats, Leisha? I mean, why bats? Well, I grew up just down there. I was born in Woodruff, grew up here. And is anybody, your experiences with bats is like them flying in your house? Yeah. It's not super fun to have a bat flying in your house. They also don't like that. But that's kind of my first experience with bats was we lived in an older home, and we had bats flying around. Once in a while, they'd get in, and it was scary. And you think of Halloween and vampire bats, and they're going to give me rabies. They're going to suck my blood, all these things. And so it's not a very bright light that is well, there is a bright light, I guess, on them now, but they're not an animal that's really been seen as a real benefit, or they just are more seen as a nuisance. And so I went to a conference. They were talking about this new fungus that was killing bats on the East Coast, white nose syndrome, if you've heard of that. I'll discuss that a little bit later. But the East Coast was losing like 99% of their bat populations of certain species. And so we knew that it would eventually come to Wisconsin, and they were talking about wanting to get some acoustic monitoring surveys going on in the state. So we had some baseline data of what bats we have here in Wisconsin. And so I was listening to this amazing human, Dave Riddell, who has since passed, but he was the state bat biologist. And he was talking about white nose syndrome and the importance of bats. And I was like, okay. But then his pocket started to move. And oh my goodness, this bat comes crawling out of his pocket and like looking around. And her name was Miss Biggs. And she was a big brown bat. And so I saw her and was introduced to a bat close up to really see what they look like and learn about their importance and how amazing their adaptations are. And I just was, that's it. I'm a bat girl. I'm the bat lady now, which all the kids call me the bat lady at school. And so we have two beautiful big brown bats that are non-releasable, injured, non-flighted bats that came from Milwaukee County. I can discuss them later if people are interested in their stories, which I'm sure you will be. So that's why bats. Bats are an animal people don't quite understand. They have these, their interactions with them aren't like cute and fuzzy. Like I saw one eating a mosquito and it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And so, with white nose syndrome, we have found how important these bats are. And unfortunately, sometimes it does take a devastating event to happen to something for us to understand and recognize and realize that, wow, that animal is really important on this landscape. Maybe me in my everyday life, I don't see that, but there are studies, and we'll talk about that too. These animals are extremely important on the landscape. They do amazing things for us and for the natural world. And so they need a voice, they need an advocate. These are two beautiful ambassador animals. We've traveled all over the state. We've traveled across the state line to educate people about bats. So I'm super excited to be here today to be able to share some of that with you. So I've got a couple of questions, a little true and false, so your batty knowledge here. And when I'm done, I do have some things up here that you can come and take a look at. But true or false, and I'll have you raise your hands here in just a moment, bats are the only true flying mammal in the world. I'm going to say it one more time. Bats are the only true flying mammal in the world. Raise your hand if you think that's true. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you think that's false. Okay, a couple of folks think that's false. It is true. They are the only true flying mammal in the world, which is absolutely incredible. They are a mammal that can sustain flight. They're not birds. They're very different. They're mammals. We won't need to get into the differences there. So they're very unique in that way. How many different species of bats do you think there are in the world? Just shout out a number. 10. 1,000. 100. There are about 1,000, actually there's almost exactly 1,500 bat species in the entire world. They just found the 1,500th bat species in Africa this fall, which is very, very cool. So of all the mammal species of every type of mammal in the world, there's about maybe 5,000 different mammals, like different types of dogs, horses, cats, every mammal, every different species that there is, about 1/5 of that is a bat. Type of bat. And so they represent about a fifth of all the mammal species in the world, which is incredible, which makes them incredibly diverse. They can live anywhere except the polar regions. They eat a variety of things. Here in Wisconsin, what do you think our bats eat here? Mosquitoes? Fox? Did I hear that right? No. Moths. Sorry. Those big fox-eating bats. Yeah, so they all are insectivores or insect-eating bats, which is very beneficial to us in many ways. So excellent job. So they are insect-eating bats. How many bat species do we have here in Wisconsin? If there's 1,500 in the whole world, how many do you think we have here in Wisconsin? How many different types of bats? 10, 7, 13. 2? I heard it. 8. There are 8 species of bats. And when I'm done here, if you want to come up, I did hand make little felted bats that are the exact size and weight of all the different bat species we have here in the state. So we have 8 species of bats here in Wisconsin. We break them into 2 different groups. We have our cave bats and our tree bats. And the cave bats are the species that hibernate in the wintertime and live together in larger groups during the summer. Our tree bats live by themselves in the summertime, just roost alone, and then in the wintertime, what do? They migrate. As everyone, all these bats are insectivores. There's nothing to eat here, right, in the wintertime. So what's really great, so when I went to college, I was originally a math major in actuarial science. And I love numbers. I love budgets and things like that, and profit margins and all that fun stuff. But I love when numbers are even. And we have 8 different types of bats here in Wisconsin. We only had 7 different types of bats in 2016. In 2016, up till 2016. In 2016, a new species of bat was found in Wisconsin, which hadn't happened in over 60 or 70 years. Anybody know what species of bat is our newest bat? Nobody's been to a bat talk before? The evening bat. So the evening bat is actually now our smallest bat. It's got about a 9-inch wingspan. Okay, and they are found in Illinois in southern parts, but they slowly had started to move north and are now in the southern part of Wisconsin. And they've been noticing them before 2016 a little bit, but in order for a state to consider an animal one of its species, it has to show that it is breeding and raising young in your state. If a critter just kind of runs through your state, you can't say, all right, it's a species of Wisconsin. They have to show that they're raising young there. And so there are a number of little colonies of these evening bats in southern and southeastern Wisconsin. So we have 8 bat species. 4 of them are tree bats that hibernate, and 4 different species are the ones that that migrate and are the tree bats. Anybody know our 4 hibernating cave bats? Well, who's this? The big brown, okay. So right now, these guys should be hibernating. I've had them about 9 years. They're probably 11 or 12 years old. How old can bats live to be? How much? 20? I heard 100. Not quite. About 30 years old. Depending on the species, they can live. Big browns, they found a big brown that was 32 years old, and they knew that because it had been captured in a mist net. It had been banded as a baby bat. What do you call a baby bat? Oh, a batling? I wish. Oh. They're called pups. So it was banded as a pup, and then they write down that information similar to bird banding. And so 32 years later, it was actually banded or recaptured in Dane County in Wisconsin, which is the oldest bat ever in the United States, which is super cool. So what other bats are our hibernators, our cave bats? We have the big brown, the little brown. Ooh, the silver-haired is a migrator, but it is one. It's a beautiful bat. The northern long-eared is a hibernator. And this last one, they just changed the name a couple years ago. It was called the pipistrelle, but now it's called the tricolored bat. So we have the tricolored bat, the northern long-eared, the little brown, and the big brown bat are the 4 bat species that hibernate. And so these are also the 4 species in the state of Wisconsin that are considered threatened, because they are the 4 species that are susceptible to what? White nose syndrome, okay? So then on the other side, the other 4 bats that live by themselves in the summertime and then migrate down to southern United States, down into Mexico, we have the silver-haired bat. Nice job, Mike. What's another bat species? Anybody know? The evening, oh, nice. Good, the evening bat. The red bat, and then our largest bat in the state is the hoary bat. They have about a 16-inch wingspan. So the bats here in Wisconsin are, they're about 9-inch wingspans to about 16, and kind of all in between there. So the hoary bat is it is the largest bat in Wisconsin. The big brown, so these boys here, their wingspan is about 13 inches when they're fully open. So, and I have people say, "Oh, this bat was flying and its wingspan was like this." I think it's like I got this muskie and it was like this big. So they only can be 16 inches really. And the hoary bats, you probably won't see much of them around. But has anybody ever had a bat in their house? Excellent. If you've had a bat in your house or living in your attic, it's most likely a big brown bat. So it's going to be this boy here that we have. Okay, so what are bats doing right now? Obviously, they're either sleeping or they've migrated out of the state. So they told me I could hibernate these boys. They said, put them in the fridge, and like, ooh, and it's a little weird. What if you get up at night and you're hungry and you go to grab something? No, or the power goes out. No, we wouldn't keep them in the fridge with food. But so what we do notice is that they do eat a lot less this time of year. And they have to have a warm humidifier to keep their moisture in their skin so they don't get too dry. I have to pinch their little butt skin to make sure that they have plenty of hydration. They get bat smoothies every week. We can talk about bat smoothies if you're interested later too. And they eat live mealworms. So we do have several permits from the government to have these bats, and I can talk about that as well. So I mentioned that we do a lot of surveys. We've been doing these surveys since 2011 at the Discovery Center, which is kind of how I got into bats was, because we have so many lakes in this area, we've got a lot of good bat population up here, especially our little browns and our big browns. They love to live by lakes. So if you live by a lake, most likely you've got a good bat population around you. You might not always see them, but they are there. So we have been conducting these surveys for many, many years. And even before, we started doing it in the state, they had been trying to use surveys or make machines that could hear bats. Because bats are one of those animals that they're just really hard to study. One, they're small. Two, you can't hear them, right? And they're out at night when you can't see. It's not like you go birding. I'm a birder too, and I hear them, I see them, it's great. You go out at night, you don't hear anything, you don't see anything with ourselves, right? So they're super hard to study. And so they had started to develop equipment that turned bat calls. What do you call a bat call? Echolocation. Excellent. Is that a new word for anybody? Probably not. It's a good word. But it picks up their echolocation and it turns it into a sound that we can hear with our ears. And then the newer handheld units, these walkabouts, they have a little sonogram on here so you can actually see the call. And if you know your bats enough, you can tell the sounds sound differently, and the sonograms actually look different as well. They're kind of calling on different wavelengths. So we've got, anyone here do volunteer surveys? I think I've seen a few people in here that do them. Yeah. So this is a project that anyone can get involved in. And so we knew that white nose syndrome was going to be coming to our state at some point. It did eventually come here in 2014. It was found on the East Coast in 2006. So it took a little bit of time to make its way to Wisconsin, but we knew it was coming. And so we've been doing these surveys. I do have some samples over here to show Carlin Lake. Is anybody familiar with Carlin Lake in Presque Isle? That is probably one of the most extreme cases of showing the impact of white nose syndrome on bat populations. We had been doing surveys on that lake before 2014, and then we continued to do them after 2014, and I have a map comparison of those bats that were on there. So what this machine does is it'll pick up the bat calls, and it's got a GPS in it, so it will follow our trail as we go, and every time we encounter a bat, it saves a file of that bat species that's calling, and then the state, they have folks that look at those files, and we get a map back with colored dots on it that tell us exactly which species we encountered along our way, which is super, super great. Until white nose came, and you'd go out and you'd maybe hear one or two bats, when you would hear hundreds and hundreds of bats before that. So the impact was quite great in the state. A lot of places lost about 80% of the bats in the hibernacula. What's really fabulous right now is this past like last winter, they found that the Maine hibernacula in the state had they're at 50% of what they used to be, which is awesome. So about 10 years later, a little more than 10 years later, they're starting to show an immunity to this white nose syndrome. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is a cold-loving fungus. So they'll get the spores on them in the summertime, and it doesn't bother them. The fungus does not grow. But when they go into hibernation, that cool cave, that moisture is the perfect opportunity for that fungus to grow. And it shows up as this kind of white powdery substance on their face. It eats holes in their wings. And so they're in hibernation. And these bats, for the most part, are true hibernators. So they will go completely into hibernation, where a big brown bat, their heart might beat once or twice every 47 minutes. I mean, they are just like, they're totally asleep. And they have just enough energy to survive, to sleep, and then wake up in the spring to forage and find food. So they're sleeping, this fungus is growing, it irritates their face, it eats holes in their skin, and so it wakes them up, and it's like February, they're flying around, like, I'm awake, and there's nothing to eat, and so they literally starve to death, which is very unfortunate. And there's, they've been studying this for a long time, and there's not a whole lot of efficient ways for us to battle this, except just let the animals try to protect their hibernacula, try to keep people out of there because it's spread very easily, but also just to let animals do their thing and become naturally immune to it. And they've started to show that immunity, especially this past year, which is really great because we lost in certain areas probably about 80 to 90% of, especially the little brown bats. The northern long-eared bats have also really been devastated by this fungus. So why do we care that all these bats have died? About 7 million bats have died of white nose since it came in 2006. It did come over from Europe. There's the exact same type of fungus on the bats there, but it does not affect them. But they also have a very small amount of bats out there. If anybody's ever traveled to Europe, there's not a whole lot of bats out there. And so what they think is what's there is a remnant population of what used to be, and they're now immune to it. And so the thought is that it was brought over to the United States by somebody who had gone into a cave, gotten the fungus on their clothes, went into a cave in New York, is actually where kind of like the ground zero was, and just spread the fungus. And those bats had never encountered that, and so there was over 1 million bats dead in one winter in that one cave. The biologists went in to just check on the bats, as they do, and they were just all on the ground. And a couple bats, die here and there, and that's not, unheard of if they're sick or whatnot. But to have 1 million bats dead on the ground is not, something's wrong there. And so they lost a lot of bats over on the East Coast. But luckily, Wisconsin, we were able to get out and get some baseline information. But we're just now finally seeing them coming back, which is really, really great. But why? Why do we care that bats are back? What do they do for me? Does he come mow my lawn? What are bats good for? Mosquito control, you got it. So pest control, okay? So they'll eat a number of moths, especially pests in agriculture. I think there's about 24 different species of bugs and insects that destroy crops that bats naturally predate on. So they're a free pesticide. And so when we take those bats out of that equation, what now do farmers have to do to their farm fields to combat those moths and insects? Insecticide, pesticides, right? So they were looking at, if you took the bats off the landscape in Wisconsin and you ended up having to do all the work that bats are doing by naturally eating bugs, and we had to use chemicals for that purpose, they found that it was between about $700,000 and $1.5 billion a year that Wisconsin saves in that cost because bats are here doing that work. So we really should care, that they're here and that they're disappearing. And so, I was at the very beginning, I mentioned that, unfortunately, sometimes something really terrible has to happen for us to realize that, wow, that's really something that we needed on this landscape. We should really, pay attention and work on conservation for that particular animal. And so for the bats, it was one of the worst that biologists had ever seen in the history of watching animals and keeping track of their numbers, to have an animal like this decimated so quickly in such a horrible way. It's had about a 99% mortality rate, and so it's like they get it, they're gone. But now they're starting to show that they actually, sometimes they'll have it and it doesn't bother them as much. So that immunity is really going to be key to having these bats come back on the landscape. But unfortunately, how many pups do bats have a year? One. They have one pup a year. So, we've lost over 7 million bats. And even if the bats are having one pup, the red bat is a species that can have two. We're just probably never going to see those numbers like we used to have. I grew up here on Big Arborvita Lake, and we used to have bats just swooping all over the place. And everybody's like, I remember when I was little, bats were all over. They were just swooping all over, and I see nothing now. And I have a bat house, and it's got cobwebs in it because nobody's living in it. And, it really just took our numbers down. And I know I kind of realized that the mosquitoes, I feel like there was more mosquitoes all of a sudden. It could have been like in my brain. But they did do some studies, and the number of mosquitoes have gone up because bats like the little brown bat, which is a little smaller than the big brown bat, how many mosquito and mosquito-sized insects do you think one little brown bat will eat in 1 hour? 1,000? 300? 1,000 is about 1,200 an hour. So we like our little browns. They do a lot for that kind of pest control. The big brown bats in the wild are mainly beetle eaters. So they'll have, if I take, Edgar is the bat that'll come out if I'm allowed to take him out. And he's super sweet. So he just looks really awesome on my glove, and he doesn't mind it. He tolerates being handled. But Eugene, who I have hanging here, he does not like to be handled. And his little mouth will open and he'll hiss. And they have these super sharp teeth. They're really strong jaws because they will crush beetles. That's kind of what they're meant to do. So they're such a great benefit. And that's just the insectivores here in Wisconsin. So when we're looking at bats around the world, bats eat insects. What else can bats eat? Fruit. Fish. There's one type of bat that eats fish. Guess what it's called? The fish-eating bat. I mean, come on. There's the big brown bat, the little brown bat, the red bat, the silver-haired bat. With 1,500 bats, you can only get so creative. Different types of bats. They're really having fun with these names now. But yeah, so they're just incredible. So they can eat fish, insects, fruit, anything else? Blood are vampire bats. Vampire bats, there's only 3 types of vampire bats in the world. They all live on which continent? South America. Very good. So we don't have them here, so no worries. Do they suck blood? They do not suck blood. I'm so sorry to disappoint anyone here who thought that this vampire bat's going to latch onto your neck and suck your blood. They're actually a very tiny bat. I've gotten to work with them before, and their adaptation is they actually can land next to an animal, climb up, and with their very sharp incisor teeth, they will make a slit and then lick the blood up like a kitten drinking milk. And to keep the blood flowing, their saliva has an anticoagulant in it, and so it keeps the blood flowing. Guess what they call vampire blood or vampire bat saliva? It is cool. They call it Draculin. I mean, come on. Really? I just love it. Bats are so great, you guys. So they're actually looking at the properties of vampire bat saliva and using that in surgeries to keep people's blood flowing so they don't clot when they're doing surgeries and things. And so you might get some Draculin in you someday. And we would call that when we use things from nature to help humans. We kind of look at those properties and we kind of mimic it. What is that called? Biomimicry. Excellent. So vampire bats, even though we're just like, ugh, they're actually really incredible. And just we can learn a lot from them. What else do bats eat? Small mammals, birds. Judy just sent me something about a bat that ate a robin. There's bats that eat other bats. Things gotta live, right? But all these types of bats, there's a reason they're here. Fruit bats, they're eating an entire fruit. They digest everything except what? The seeds. And where do those seeds go? They poop them out. What do you call bat poop? Guano, oh, smart crowd, I love it. So guano, you can buy bat poop. Did you know this? At the Willie Street Market in Madison, I bought a big bag. It was $15 for a bag of bat poop. I get a lot from these guys, so I don't have to buy it anymore. But it's a really great fertilizer for plants. A lot of nitrogen is in there. So these fruit bats, they're the Megachiroptera. So Chiroptera, has anyone heard that term before? That's kind of the order that bats are in. They're in the order Chiroptera, and that literally means hand wing. Okay? If you look at a bat, their wings are their hands, their arms. So we actually have a very similar body structure to bats. They're just a little bit different lengths of things, but they've got arms like us. They've got 4 fingers like this, and they have a thumb. But as a bat, these 4 fingers are super, super long, and a thin skin is stretched in between. And then they have a thumb, a little tiny digit, but it has a long nail. And what do you suppose they use those nails for? For climbing. Excellent. Okay, so hand wing, Chiroptera. So we have the Megachiroptera, which are these fruit bats. They're known as like the old world fruit bats. They're from Asia, Australia, and Africa. They're the really big ones. How big is the biggest bat in the world? Do you know? What's that big wingspan? How many feet wide, long? What is it? 4, 3, 6? It is 6. I've painted this 6-foot wingspan bat. Kind of, sort of. Okay? So this is a Malayan flying fox fruit bat. It is the exact size of one of the largest bats in the world with a 6-foot wingspan. So that Megachiroptera, those fruit-eating bats, they're flying around, they're pooping out seeds, and what happens when those seeds hit the ground? They germinate, they create new plants. So they're going around like pooping, and new forests are popping up behind them, especially in these areas where they're clear cutting, and there's no money to go into conservation work, and it's just open. So they're flying around pooping, and trees are popping up. It's great. It's wonderful. The last thing that bats eat, no one mentioned it. If you like tequila, you might find this important. Nectar. There's nectar-feeding bats. They live all over the world, but in the United States, they're in the southwestern part because they will pollinate plants that tend to bloom at night. They're usually yellow or white flowered, and they smell very much like vinegar because the bats love that smell. The bats have, as Carol said, I tell them apart by their smell. And they are pollinators. If you like, bananas and things, chocolate, they pollinate all kinds of plants. And the agave plant is, if you like tequila, about 98% of agave plants are pollinated by a bat. So next time you have a little tequila, thank a bat for that. So those fruit bats are a Megachiroptera. And then the smaller bats are known as, what do you think? Not Megachiroptera, but Microchiroptera. So the smallest Microchiroptera in the world has a 6-inch wingspan. It is called the bumblebee bat. Very, very small. They're an endangered little bat. We don't have them here, and bats are all in between. And so if you're ever bored, just look up Bats of the World. You'll get the craziest looking faces, especially the fruit bats. They don't use echolocation. No fruit bats use echolocation. What do you think they use to find their food? Their sense of smell. So they have like these super long noses, really bizarro looking nostrils. One of my favorites is called the tube nose fruit bat. It's literally, like its face has 2 tubes on its face that are its nostrils to smell. It's the cutest thing ever. So super, super diverse. How am I doing for time? Should I wrap it up? Okay. See, I usually talk about bats for an hour, and I'm all over the place. So in closing, I'm hoping you have lots of good questions. I have a lot more to say, but I want to kind of open it up to folks here. So we are very fortunate in Wisconsin to have the 8 species that we do have. And, they are battling this white nose syndrome. There are many things that you can do to help bats. I'm sure folks are curious about that. So I could talk about that, or could we wait till someone asks me the question? I don't know. Or we can talk about it later.
You want.
I'll fit it in wherever I want. Okay. So
Okay, so Katie has a microphone here, and we do ask that you. Katie has a microphone, and we do ask that you raise your hand and wait for her, so our online audience and everybody in the room can hear for you, and she'll make her way to you.
don't make the questions too hard. Just kidding. I know a lot about bats. I study bats. I love bats. I don't consider myself a bat expert, but I will, to my best of my ability, give you an answer. And if I cannot answer, I have some wonderful folks with the Wisconsin DNR bat program that are extremely intelligent, and they're working with bats every day and trying to conserve and protect. Really, really great folks. So I can share their information too.
Okay, so, okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
I'm like, where is she talking from? She's coming from all around me.
So it's been several years since we've had a bat in the house, probably because of the white nose syndrome. But
Yeah.
when we have a bat in the house, what's the best way to capture it and release it safely?
Excellent. Good question. So I've got a bat in my house. Now what? So the best thing to do is if you can get it to be in one room, that's good. Like if it flies into like a bedroom, shutting the door in there. If you're able to open up a window or a door, and so that's usually what I'll do. So I'll turn on the lights because they don't really want to be in the light. They have echolocation, right? They're using that to find their way. They don't need the light. They don't like bright lights, which is why little Eugene was kind of like upset when these lights came on, which is why Hims is covered now. But, turn the lights on inside and then have an open door or an open window. And eventually, usually they will find their way out because they want to go to that darkness. If they're not, and they're just still flying around, they will get tired and they will land somewhere. Try to keep an eye on them to see where they land. And so what you want to do at that point is to try to capture it in a box. Usually I tell folks if you have a small tote or a small box, you can put over it and then slide a piece of cardboard or some paper underneath so it's kind of protected in that little box that you're putting it in. You may also, I would suggest wearing thick leather gloves just in the event that it pops out. As I mentioned, bats have extremely sharp teeth. They're so sharp that if they were to bite you, you probably wouldn't even feel it. So best to protect yourself first and to have thick leather gloves on. But get something over them. Sometimes people use a blanket or a net. They can get tangled in those things. So they do have pretty long nails. So they can get caught, and their little feet are, their toes are pretty delicate. Well, they're not delicate. They're super awesome. But, they've got little skinny toes. And if you wrap them up in a blanket, they could get crushed. But then taking them outside and then just opening up that, whatever you caught them in, if it's in a towel or a net, let them leave on their own. You should never toss them into the air because they could be disoriented. They could smack into something and hurt themselves. Like Eugene, so the bat that I have here, he was brought into the Milwaukee Humane Society. He was on the ground. Somebody found him. He couldn't fly. So they brought him in, and he had a broken shoulder. So he must have smacked into something, or something smacked him, and that shoulder just never healed. Bat bones are pretty unique. They're a lot more cartilage than ours, and especially their finger bones are pretty flat, because when they're flying, they have to be pretty bendable going through the forest, in between the branches and things. But it does mean that when they do break, it's harder for them to heal a little bit better. And Edgar, the other boy that we have here, he was in a door frame, and someone didn't see him. They didn't know he was in there, and they shut the door, slammed it, and his whole wing, his one wing, it was completely crushed. So that'd be like your whole arm and your hand being crushed in a door. And that didn't heal correctly either. So both boys can't fly. But it's best to have them a path out. Anybody that's panicking and screaming, obviously get them out of there. That doesn't help anybody, especially the bat. They don't want to be in there. Usually if you've got a bat in your house, it's usually going to be kind of in June. And that's because that's when the young are learning to fly and finding their way out. And they get confused a lot easier than adult bats. They kind of know what they're doing at that point. Because when bats are at your house, anyone have a bat roost that bats live in? You're lucky if you do. It's not too often we find bats in bat roosts right now just because of their low numbers. But bats, if they live in your house, in your attic, or in a bat roost, they always come back to the exact same place every summer. So in the wintertime, bats in northern Wisconsin that hibernate, they're actually going up north to the UP, and they're sleeping where? In the mines. The mines of the UP. Those are great places. The Nita mine down in Wisconsin is one of the top areas for little brown bats to hibernate. 40% of all the bats in the United States hibernate in Wisconsin in like 3 spots. So they're very susceptible to decline because they live all together. So one thing could happen to a space and you've lost hundreds of thousands of bats. They have 1 pup a year, so they don't reproduce very quickly. The places that they do need to live, they live in hollow trees, dead trees. So if you've got dead trees on your property and it's not going to fall on your home, we always tell people to leave them up because so many animals use those, insects. But bats love to roost in tree cavities. And so I've totally gone off topic, off your question. See, I can't help myself. But yeah, so protection first. Always wear leather gloves if you're needing to handle a bat or anything like that. But give them a space to get out, turn on some lights. They want to go to the dark. Good luck.
A question about wind chimes. Will they scare away my bats out of my bat house?
Bats, well, it depends. Bats hear on a different frequency than we do. So a lot of times they aren't hearing some of the things that we can hear. I've got wind chimes at my house. I don't feel like that would be anything. I wouldn't put them too close because if they do like drop out of the house, you don't want them to like get caught in anything as they're flying away. So having them, at least maybe 15, 20 feet away from a roost would be fine. But definitely the sound, and they're like, whatever. Yeah.
I'm wondering how hopeful the perspective is. How young can they have pups?
Yeah, so how young can they have pups? For the females, it's, I believe, depending on species, it's different for every type of bat, but I believe at 2 years they can reproduce, and for males, I think it's a little sooner than that. And when they mate in the fall, when like the best genetics are around, they've made it through summer, nothing happened to them, and then they mate in the fall, and depending on the species, some species the females will store the sperm in their bodies and like let it just like hang out in there. That's a weird way to put that. Or some eggs will be fertilized to like the blastocyst stage, and they just kind of free float in the uterus, and they actually do not implant until the spring. A lot of animals are like that. Anyone know what that's called when animals mate at one time of year, but there's no implantation until later in the year? Delayed implantation. Very good. So bears do that. Any animal in the weasel family do that. It allows the animals to mate when the best genetics are around and the strongest, genes are there. Males will mate with a female and then they leave. They don't raise the young. And if you've got a bat roost, and if there's a lot of bats in it, it's most likely a maternity colony, actually. They really like those bat roosts. And so a bunch of mother bats from the same species will come together, give birth in the spring, and then help each other raise their young. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So it doesn't take too long for them to become sexually mature, which is great as far as numbers and repopulation goes. As long as there was talk, I kind of was hearing that there is another strain of white nose that somehow it's like mutating. It's like, but they are, especially here in Wisconsin this past year, they've really started showing immunity and are coming back pretty strong. And we've been seeing that in our surveys, especially with the little brown bats, our little green dots. If you're a bat surveyor, the green dots are the little browns on the survey, and those really started coming back good this year. The big browns, however, I only saw them show up on a couple of surveys, and we probably have about 70 or 80 surveys that are done by about 100 volunteers that I coordinate at the Discovery Center, but the big browns are just not showing up hardly at all, and that has me a little concerned about that particular animal. Good question.
Let's hear about those bat smoothies.
The bats, oh goody! The bat smoothie. So what goes into a bat smoothie? Oh, the boys get them once a week. So in my own personal blender, mind you, My Ninja blender, it needs to really be blended good, and those cheap ones just do not work. So I use the same one I use for my own smoothies. This is dedication. This is our director's over here, so I just want him to know like how dedicated I am to this. I'm all in, Don. I'm all in. So I put in, so they eat live mealworms, which are kind of like, they're the larval version, the larval stage of these little black beetles. So they'll eat live of those every night. I'll fill little dishes all over their enclosure, and they've got a giant dog, soft dog enclosure that they live in at the Discovery Center, and I've got all these things that they can climb on. They roost, they go under, they're pretty fast. And Eugene did escape twice in my home during COVID because I left it open. Whoopsies. But anyway, so they get these mealworms every day. But in a smoothie, I put in a bunch of live mealworms, a little bit of water, some sweet potato baby food, a CQ10 powder for their heart health, an organic flaxseed oil to keep their poops regular, a feline supplement, and then a powdered dog biscuit that I blend up to a powder. I put all of that into the blender. I blend it up, and it just turns into a brown smoothie, basically. It looks like a chocolate smoothie. And then I make a big batch, so I'll pull about 60 to 70 1cc syringes of those, and then put them in the freezer. And then every week I take 2 out, put them in a hot mug of water, let them thaw, and then I hold the boys and feed them. And what I love about them is they eat differently too. When Edgar eats, his little lips do this, and he's really gentle about eating the smoothie, like out of the syringe. But Eugene, he's a little more aggressive, and he's just like chewing on the end of the syringe, like, I'm sorry, buddy, getting it as fast as I can. And then it's like all over their lips, and they're licking their lips. Oh, I can't even handle it. They're just amazing. But that's not just something I came up with because I'm crazy. There's this like 2-volume, these books that it's called Bats in Captivity, Volume 1 and Volume 2, that I had to read extensively in order to have these bats and to give them the nutrition that they need, because we are just feeding them, the live mealworms every night, which we do feed sweet potato to. The worms eat that. But if you're just feeding an animal, just like your dog, if you're feeding the same exact thing all the time, they're just not getting a diverse diet. And so that's a really great way to keep them hydrated, especially this time of year. And so they've done really well, and they took to it really well too. They didn't ever spit it out or anything. So
there are a lot of people who want to ask you questions, just so you know. There's a lot coming.
So I should shut up and not talk so much. Okay.
No, you're doing great. But I see a lot of hands waving. I've got a few online. What is the cost to bat populations of people spraying their lawns to control mosquitoes?
Oh, good question. So what is that impact maybe on bats from people spraying? So I've read different studies about it. Some say it doesn't hurt them at all, which I don't quite agree with. I have read stuff where it does say that, insects that have chemicals on them, these bats are going out and eating that. And so they do get very sick. I've had people, we do bat surveys on their lakes, and, there's an area where there was always bats, always bats, always bats. And all of a sudden in the survey, there's no bats there. And they said, those people just sprayed the other day. So that's kind of anecdotal, just by looking at it. But I feel, it's taken away food too. That's the food that they need, and you're poisoning the food that they eat. They say you don't poison mice because you throw them outside. Now the foxes are eating them, the owls are eating them, now they're getting sick. So I don't think that there's no way that it's not affecting the bats. And I've just seen that just on some of my own studies.
Do bats have to worry about other predators such as owls or nighthawks?
Great question. So predators of bats. There are a number of predators of bats. Owls are definitely one. And then coyotes. Coyotes are opportunistic eaters. Bats, at about 9 weeks old, they start to learn how to fly. So they're coming out of their bat roost, and a lot of times it's what is happening? And they're on the ground, what? And the coyotes will actually sit under a bat roost and wait for the young to come out and then grab them off the ground. Hawks are also predators, and one of the biggest one, unfortunately, are cats, people's pets. Will go out and catch and kill bats. Yep, Great question. And apparently other bats eating bats, but not around here. Thank goodness.
Are there any government programs or grants to set up bat houses or anything along that line to help grow more or more housing?
Yeah, there's no programs that I know of for bat housing, but I do have a sample of a bat roost here, and I have some information. I do have a card here, so if anybody, I've got a really great bat house plan. They're really easy to make, especially, this is a single chamber bat that I made with ABW third graders. So if third graders can do it, you can do it too. But they're super simple to make, but I don't believe at this time there's any like funding to get this. The best thing to do is to leave trees up, but also to put up a bat roost, because providing habitat for an animal is always a wonderful, wonderful way to help them out. No guarantees a bat's going to move in immediately. I've had one at my house for 8 years and no one's ever lived in it. We've had one at the Discovery Center for 20 years and bats have been in it every year. Granted, there used to be 40 bats, now there's about 2, but we're hoping that they come back. But it's a great thing to look into. They're not super expensive, but they're also really fun to make, and it's fun to project with kids or a family too. Good question.
First of all, thank you so much for shouting out the MyAd presentations at camp. We have like a little clump back here, so yay!
Camp Clump.
Yeah. Second, do you know if bats have any issue with light pollution in like areas where they would have resided previously?
Yeah, so light pollution in bats. I've read a couple different things about this, and you know, just anecdotally first, so when I go do a bat survey on a lake, I find that when we're in the dark areas, there's so much more bat activity, and then we hit someone's shoreline, and there's like these blasting lights out. There's nothing, you know. But some people think, you know, got the lights out, it attracts the insects. The bats like the insects, and so it brings in the bats. Not really. They really like to be in the dark. The bright lights can be disorienting to them, so they're really going to be in the dark areas. So there is, from just studies that I've read, it does affect them, and also just my own being out and surveying lakes. It's dark. There's so much bat, and as soon as we hit a property where the lights are all blasting, they got nothing. And then it's bats again when it's dark. So, yeah. Rand, yeah.
Leisha, I was going to ask you a question. They say the only fear humans can inherit is the fear of snakes. Okay, so, and I believe if you're a Christian and you read the Bible, there might be long-term evidence of that. But how about on bats? And that's not my question. What you brought up was Arborvita Lake.
Yeah.
And the number of bats that are there that are gone. Mm-hmm. Okay, so me, you know, me being an ecologist, the way I think, we had a blue-green algae bloom on big Arborvita lakes.
Absolutely.
So when are we going to start paying attention to these connections?
Good point.
Okay, water's going up and down, insect populations.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have to start thinking differently because we're losing species.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe there's, you know, we've got a lot of UW researchers here. We have to start making those connections.
Yeah, excellent.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because, you know, a lot of times the bats, they want us to do all these surveys. The state specifically wanted the Discovery Center to get these machines to have volunteers go out because of the density of lakes we have around here, because that is where the bats are going to be. They're attracted to those insects that are hatching out of that lake, right? So if those insects are getting, something's happened to them in the lake, it's so connected. Absolutely. It's kind of like a canary in a coal mine kind of thing, you know, like you don't see some bats. I mean, they have white nose, but maybe the food isn't there anymore because of what's happening in the ecology and, you know, the lakes. So that'd be a really fascinating like master's project or whatever. Good one. But I was asked to present at the Wisconsin Lakes Conference, so people are recognizing that there is a correlation between bat populations, healthy bat populations, and healthy lakes. Absolutely, 100%. Good question.
First, thank you. This is a wonderful presentation. I appreciate all you've presented and all the great answers to our questions.
Thanks.
So my question has to do with something that people fear from bats, rabies.
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit about rabies in bats and maybe what the percentage of bats that may carry rabies in Wisconsin, and if it's really a concern, or how concerned we should be or not be?
Excellent.
Thanks.
Very good question. Absolutely. So rabies. Every bat's going to give you rabies. Just kidding. Oh my God, that's so not true. So as a mammal, of course, bats can carry rabies, right? And they say that less than 0.1% of bats will ever have rabies, and a smaller percentage is a strain that be connected to humans. However, you hear mostly that people get rabies from bats. It's extremely rare, and usually it's when a bat is noticeably sick and people go and touch, grab, pick up that bat. It's pretty rare that you would be out or a bat's in your house and it this does happen. I do not want to horrify anybody, but like you're sleeping, people are like, I wake up, I hear a bat, and it like lands near me. They can land wherever they want, but it's probably a healthy bat. It's doing healthy bat things. Now, of course, if a bat were to bite you and you were able to catch that bat, the only way to check if it has rabies is to euthanize it. And so they say, but yeah, about 0.1% of bats will ever have rabies. And bats, when they're acting not normal, like they're out during the day on the ground. Now, bats can be roosting on a building during the day. That's totally fine. Bats can be on a tree during the day. That's totally fine. If a bat is on the ground and it's crawling and it just doesn't look right, it's not supposed to be doing that. So those are where people are like, oh, it's a bat. I'm going to touch it with my bare hands, and then it's going to bite them. And so unfortunately, there's the most cases we hear about people getting rabies from bats is because they've picked up a sick bat when, if it's not healthy, we should never touch a wild animal, in my opinion, with bare hands because they're going to want to bite you. But does that answer your question, hopefully? So it's a very small percentage, but it's not, it is something to not worry about. They're not coming after you. But if you see it in your or a bat that's not making, call me first. My number's over here. I've rescued bats out of toilets. I've gone up in rafters of schools to get a bat. There's really nothing I won't do. And I'm fully protected. And I've got special pre-exposure rabies shots that I did have to get in order to have these bats. So, good
Hi,
question.
Alicia. I have a question I'm going to ask. So I'm a sailor, and sometimes I've been out on Lake Michigan, pretty far from shore, like maybe a mile or more. And more than once, bats have come and tried to land like on the sails or just like get reprieve. And I just kind of was surprised to see a bat way out in the open water. And then I also wondered, once it got off the boat, like it didn't stay, would it find its way to shore? Like, how will it be able to navigate where it's going?
It's during the day?
Yeah, it was during the day.
Okay, interesting. So bats, they're nocturnal, right? For the most part, but no animal's going to follow exactly. Like, you're not supposed to be out during the day. You're nocturnal. But so they can be out during the day if they're hungry. If they maybe didn't get enough that night, or they didn't wake up in time to eat. They'll go out. And just like birds, they need to rest. So like when bats feed or forage for food at night or whenever during the day, they do fly around quite a bit. It's a lot of energy, and they're a small animal. And they got to eat a lot of bugs to keep that energy up. So they can rest and find their way back. They are extremely intelligent. They know exactly where they're going, usually at all times. But that's really interesting. I've never heard of that. I know they sleep in umbrellas, and people open up like, hey. But I'm a sailor. We have a sailboat too, so now I want to be like, I want a bat to come to my sailboat.
Questions?
Oh. Eugene also will take questions if you have any for him.
You were showing the little doodad that you can visualize their sounds and their echolocation, and the sound is different per breed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it different per individual bat too, or not?
Not really. I don't think so. They can somewhat determine. So when they get the calls, they listen to every single call that is saved on the machine, and they look at the sonogram and they can tell the species. But what they can't tell is like if it's the same bat that you encountered, like maybe it flew up the shoreline, and it's the same bat. I do have some bat calls on my phone that I could play if you're interested in hearing, like what does that sound like? Let me just pull this up. I know we talked about maybe using the microphone. So thank you. So when we have the machine on, we're going to hear these echolocations. And I'll play a couple samples here for you, I think. There we go. And it's like a feeding call. So it's like a do, 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 do. It's a constant pulse. This echolocation is this kind of sonic sound wave that comes out. And so it goes faster when they're getting kind of like, ooh, something I want to eat. They start shooting it out quicker because then they get the echoes back and they get a really clear picture. So let's say I wanted to eat Marilyn over here. Super yummy, ma. It's like a do, 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 do. And then there's like a zoop sound. And that's them just like really focusing in. And then they swallow for a second. And then they go back to do, 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 do. And when they catch their food, Marilyn's gone. Her wings have fluttered to the ground. They just eat the body, and then they're like wings. So if you ever find wings, like Luna moth wings on the ground in the day, like in the morning, a bat probably ate it. It's okay, they need to live too. But anyway, so they do sound a little different. So I'm going to play a couple of different calls so you can kind of hear what they sound like. Okay. Oh, maybe it's not working. Oh, no. Oh, shoot. I don't know why it's not working. I'm so sorry. We'll try to work on that when we're done. I'm under pressure. Do, 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 do. Yeah, let's keep asking questions while I'm...
So for the tree-dwelling bats that migrate, where do they go?
Yeah, so depending on the species, it could be southern United States. And sometimes they will go into like a mini torpor depending on where they go. So they won't eat as much, but they're still consuming insects. And then a few of the species will go to like northern Mexico, central Mexico. So it's a pretty good distance. And I don't know, I've been asked this and I just kind of forgot to find the answer, but like I don't think they all fly together, like loons or things like that. But yeah, like monarchs do.
I had a couple of questions paired together with like bat detecting. And I have heard bats. So there must be some bats you can actually hear their echolocation, their little squeaks. And then others you can't. But then also, oh, Alicia, I'm right here.
Sorry. I'm like, who is talking? Can I see?
There's some apps that can like detect it too. Would you talk about those apps and then maybe your citizen scientist project that you have?
Yeah, so Emily May brought up a really good point. So, there's these walkabout detectors, which anyone can get. However, they're about $2,000 a piece. I know, woo! Thanks, Discovery Center. No, just kidding. Volunteers. We have amazing volunteers that pitched in and bought these new machines a couple years ago because the ones we had were just horrendous. They actually started out like in the 70s trying to do this, and they had a station wagon with a satellite dish attached to it, driving it real slow. So we've come a long way. But as Emily May mentioned, there is something you can get called an Ecometer Touch from Wildlife Acoustics. So it's this company, Wildlife Acoustics, really awesome company. They make a lot of wildlife acoustic stuff. But they have something called the Ecometer Touch. I believe it's gone down in price a little bit. I think it might be like $100, $150. But you just put this into like where you charge your phone, and there's a free app that you can download, and it'll have the screen, it'll have the sonogram. What I like about this particular unit is it will, when you hear a bat, but you'll be able to hear it, but then it'll also pop a picture up of the species that you're hearing, which is super cool, which is something that this machine does not do. So that makes it really fun and interactive, like if you've got kids and stuff to go out. When I've used it, a couple times a bat species popped up that I've never heard of, and I was like, yeah, that's probably not right. But it is a neat feature of that. Yep. Did you want me to elaborate more on something, or?
Oh, the project. Can we get involved with?
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning how to use the detector, depending on where you live, there's one at the Rhinelander DNR. I believe there's one in Eagle River with Keita Sheehan with the Land and Water Conservation Department. And then we've got one here at the Discovery Center, or two of them. So I used to do trainings every spring on the machine, but I got so many people involved that I didn't have if they were booked out all the time and I didn't have anybody. But if anyone is really passionate about learning how to use this, I am happy. Just contact me. I've set up private training sessions, and then with the survey, the volunteers go out 3 times between May and the end of September. Usually in May, late May here, depends on when the snow is gone. Into June is like a spring migration, coming back, and then a summer, kind of like a July, early August survey for like summer residents, and then late August, September are the migration, which is really fun to see the difference of the 3 maps. And we ask volunteers to do the exact same route every time so we can compare them over the years and over the season. Because it's really, and I've actually had people go out 2 nights in a row, the same exact route, have completely different results. It's just, what's the night like? What's the wind like? Who's coming through? So it's a really fun, it's great for kids. They love technology. I've taken high schoolers out, families, and I usually like to come out, and I come out and do the first one with you too. So, yeah, I guess I'm not choosing.
Hey, back here.
Oh, thank you.
So if you want, let's say you want the best bats per capita on, say, a 5-acre piece of ground, how many bat houses can I put up, and how can I? What else can I do to attract the bats to my area?
Excellent.
And where are the plans for bat houses? I'm sure they're available online, but
Yeah, absolutely. Good question.
that's what I have.
No, I love the benefits. How can I help bats? That's a great question. So a couple things that you can do. Usually bats, the most amount of bats we find within a 1/4 mile of water. So if you've got like a water feature or a lake or a river, something where there might be insects, about a 1/4 mile away is where we're really finding kind of the most bats that we have in the area. You can also garden for bats. Anybody a gardener in here? Hardly anybody? Well, you're going to start now because you're going to want to build a bat garden. So we actually have a bat garden, a demonstration garden at the Discovery Center, but you can plant specific flowers that attract insects at night that bats like to eat. And I do have plans, like lists of that, which you can also email me. I have a copy somewhere. I'll try to put it on. You can take a picture of it if you want to. So that brings in insects that they're going to eat. Putting a bat roost up, of course, nowhere near trees. You don't want it on a tree because it's too shaded. You're going to want it on a post about 8 to 10 feet up because they're going to want to drop out and fly away. So you don't want it too low. You don't want predators to get up in there. So if you've got an old building, that works really well too. Usually on the southwestern side of things, where they get maybe 6 to 8 hours of good sun a day. Because again, that's probably going to be a maternity colony, and they really need it hot in there, which is why here in northern Wisconsin, a lot of times you'll see the bat roosts are painted black. They don't have to be, but that does keep them warmer up here, especially in our area. So putting those up, not on a tree though, because predators can get in there and it's too shaded. A lot of people are like, I've had my bat house up for years and no one's in. I said, is it on a tree? Well, yeah. I'm like, well, that's why. There is like, some people said if you smear some bat poop on the bat house, it'll attract bats. I don't know. I mean, you can, if you want some, I'll give you some and you can try it. But like, smearing it on here is supposed to help. If you do have to exclude bats from your home, so that is, let's say you have like a colony living in your attic or something, and you obviously don't want them in there because, all their guano can actually make you quite sick if they have a big pile in there. It's not good for anybody. But you can exclude them from your home. Because in Wisconsin the bats are protected, you cannot exclude them between June 1st and August 15th. Why do you think that is? They're raising their young. Okay, so when you exclude a bat, they usually find where they're going in and out. They'll put a flap there so the bats can go out, but they can't get back in. Now the bat's excluded. But if they've got young in there, you cannot keep a mom from going back to those babies. It's not good. But if you do exclude, which is totally okay to do, they say that if you put a bat roost up like beforehand, about 75% chance that those bats will just move right into that bat roost, which would be pretty cool. Yeah. Sing them melodies, sing them sweet songs, I don't know. But you can garden, if you buy water, and putting up a bat roost are great.
Hey, Leisha. Megan Frank over here. So we have bats that summer roost in our barn, and we're cool with that. And we just recently learned that we think they are actually winter roosting in our home. And so I had one in the house in November and dealt with that. And so we're going to move forward with the exclusion. But I'm kind of curious, like, should I be concerned that, I don't know, if they've been winter roosting in our, or like winter hibernating, I don't know, in our home, like, are we going to confuse them now? Are they just like, are they going to be able to go find somewhere good to go in the winter now? If we close that option off to them.
We just start charging them rent or something to keep them in there. No, I was kidding. No, and those are most likely big brown bats.
It is, yeah.
Yep, yeah. Like, they're the most hardy of all the bats. That's why they do well in captivity. Bats are an animal that normally in captivity they don't live as long because they're stressed out and they're small. But I wouldn't worry. I think if you're, especially for winter time, they'll find something else. They're super smart. They're adaptable. I think thank you for thinking about that. They might, and these guys can live where it's winterized, where it's really cold, like more than any other bat. Like other ones, like it needs to be 42 degrees and 30% humidity all the time. But big browns, they're just like, meh, whatever. I'm half frozen. I'm half not frozen. I'm cool. But yeah, I wouldn't worry that they're gonna like just die on you. They'll figure it out.
Cool.
They'll figure it out. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rest assured, Meg, it's okay.
One more. I just had a quick question that I was, a lot of fungus is actually antifungal, and there is some research about this specific mushroom, Trichoderma polysporum, that it kills 100% of white nose. Has that been utilized, or have you heard of it? Or?
No, Emily Mays, the fungus, the mushroom lady. That's really fascinating. I have not heard of that at all, but I would love, please do. Fungus fighting fungus. Love it. Fungus need a good rap too, right? It's like, ooh, fungus. Ugh. But I love it. Thank you. I've not heard of that.
All right. Well, Alicia will stick around for a little while if anybody wants to come up.
Am I allowed to take out Edgar? I don't know.
Rocky Reef, that question is for you.
You might have a mutiny on your hand if we say no. So before,
we'll turn the lights down.
We'll turn the lights off. I'll have Edgar up here. I'll just kind of be holding him in my gloves if you want to come up and take a look at him. Obviously, please do not try to touch him. If you try to even point at him, I'll panic and put him away. Because if these animals were to ever bite somebody, or we thought that they might, I would have to have them destroyed immediately. And we don't want that.
Alicia says she tells everybody to sit on their hands.
Yes.
So think about that.
And then you can see some of my other stuff up here too.
Well, thank you so much to Alicia Johnson.
Very honored to be here. And I just can't stop talking. No, super honored to be here. I am really happy to see so many folks here. Maybe some of you just wanted a beer and were like, what's happening in here? Appreciate you sticking around. Interested in bats. Again, these are an animal that people have these preconceived notions that they're bad, and they really are incredible. They're diverse. They're so important. And when you come look at this munchkin's face, you don't have to be like someone who wants to snuggle a bat forever, but as long as we're appreciating and respecting their role here and how important that is to us and everything else, the better I think they'll be.
Yeah. Thank you to all our sponsors, Rocky Reef, Lakeland Chapter UW Alumni Association, Minocqua Public Library, Kemp Natural Resources, UW Trout Lake, WXPR, and Brittingham Fund. We'll see you back here on February 5th, where we'll hear about Hanson Honey, and you can sign up for our email list on our website.
Thank you.